Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Dialogue. I'm TAimour Shamil. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is on his maiden trip to Afghanistan, Kabul, where he met Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and also his counterpart, the Afghani Foreign Minister in Kabul. Pakistan and Afghanistan both have suffered a lot in this war on terror, the 17 years long war on terror. Innocent people in Afghanistan were targeted by the Taliban, and also innocent people inside Pakistan have also been the target of various terrorist organizations like Daesh, TTP, Jamaatul Ahrar and many others. Pakistan and Afghanistan have seen ups and downs in their relationship. But this gesture of Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi and the new government, that he took a maiden trip, his first trip to any country, is symbolic and is very important. Since he is on his visit to Kabul, the gesture is positive and it is also received positively in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. Both countries have agreed so far that they would fight the common foe, the common enemy, that is extremism and terrorism, and also that they would continue to cooperate in different areas, specifically in security as well as in trade. We're going to discuss about this, and also we're going to discuss about today. Yesterday, Prime Minister Imran Khan, he addressed the civil servants in Islamabad, and he made a lot of points. His main point primarily was that we need to buck up, and the bureaucrats primarily have to think out of the box and work for the betterment of the people. Government and the bureaucrats, they need to be on the same page to address the issues that are there at the grassroots level. Ultimately, because the work of bureaucracy is to benefit the people at the grassroots level. We'll discuss about these 2 points, and for that we have our special guest in the studios. Our first guest is Mr. Wajih Abbasi. He is a political analyst and also has an understanding of the framework of bureaucracy. Welcome to the program, Mr. Wajih Abbasi. Our second guest is Dr. Abid Abbasi. He is an expert on Pakistan's foreign policy and also a political commentator. Welcome to the show, Dr. Abbasi. Mr. Wajih Abbasi, starting with Afghanistan trip of Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi. This is his maiden trip, this first trip to any country. This certainly is a symbol, is a gesture that is well received by Kabul and also by the experts in Islamabad as well. Pakistan and Afghanistan both have been targeted by the extremists, by the terrorists. This is the time that we should work together and move forward and actually do something about improving the security matters as well as the trade matters. How do you see Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Foreign Minister's, this visit?
If you see the historical background, it has always been the case that the situation in Afghanistan always had profound impact on the situation in Pakistan as well as, in fact, the whole of South Asia. And our security situation has deteriorated since the start of the Afghan war in 1979. Right. So it's very important for us to, if we want to have a good security situation here, to solve our problems, to solve the Afghan situation also. So Pakistan not only has, it has Afghanistan in its mind, but Afghanistan's improvement of situation in Afghanistan, solution of Afghan war will have a profound impact on Pakistani situation also. So that matter, the security situation, the fight on terror in Afghanistan is directly linked to the fight on terror in our territory also. So for that matter, it's very important for us to have our trust deficit, which has been, for some reason or others, has been going on between Pakistan and Afghanistan, that has to be gapped. And Pakistan and Afghanistan should have to solve their problems so that they can fight jointly with the terrorists which are having impact on both Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Right. Dr. Abid, talking about Pakistan-Afghanistan relations, as I said earlier, Pak-Afghan relations have seen ups and downs. But Pakistan, while also interacting with the United States and the NATO forces and the whole issue in Afghanistan, has made 3 things very clear. And the 3 points are that Pakistan would not become a scapegoat in this war on terror. We have given this clear message to our American friends. Second, that we would not fight anybody else's war on Pakistan soil, because ultimately we have to keep our national interest, our national security in focus. And the third thing is that it is a failed strategy, United States and NATO's failed strategy in Afghanistan. These messages have been very clear to the US forces and the NATO forces. Both Pakistan and Afghanistan would be working on APAPs, and Afghanistan-Pakistan Action Plan for Peace and Solidarity, we have brought up the issue of terrorist organizations operating inside Afghanistan. We know TTP, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar, Daesh for that matter, and these people have been targeting innocent Pakistanis. How can we work together to eliminate these terrorist organizations which are operating inside Afghanistan?
Thank you very much, Taimour. I think, as you mentioned in your intro, that it's a long history that Pakistan and Afghanistan, both the countries have been target of the terrorist organizations. And, you know, the war on terror was fought by more than 40 countries in this region. And particularly if we talk about Pakistan, Pakistan has suffered a lot without having, you know, any sort of terrorist activities like Afghanistan in our soil. But we have been targeted. We have sacrificed more than 80,000 innocent Pakistanis. We have suffered more than 80,000, $80 billion loss of the economy of Pakistan. And the foreign minister, as he, approached Afghanistan, Afghan leadership, and he made his first tour to Afghanistan, being after taking oath as the foreign minister of Pakistan. Though he has been a foreign minister for a good number of years in the previous government of Pakistan People's Party as well. He is a very experienced man and one of the most experienced ministers in the new cabinet, and he is a very veteran politician of the country. He knows much about foreign policy because he's having experience as well. But the situation is not as simple that we can solve all those problems with one tour or with making some sort of goodwill gestures like Qureshi, Foreign Minister Qureshi has made. This is a very complex situation. The United States, as you mentioned in your intro and question as well, that United States of America has its own interest in the region, and those interests are so complex and so complicated. Or similarly, some other forces also working in this particular region. The regional forces having their own intentions and own interest in the Afghanistan and in Pakistan region. It's all those South Asian regions, and the whole world, is focusing on this region. This region is not somewhat related to Pakistan and Afghanistan, or for that matter, India or other regional forces, but the whole global interest or global games are being played in this region. But if we take in consideration the newly formed government, Prime Minister Imran Khan being opposition leader, when he was in opposition, he has been raising this question, which you mentioned 3 points, that this is not our war. We have sacrificed more than anybody else in this war, but this was not our war. And he categorically used to say this thing for so many times, that after coming into power, we will try to get out of this war. And I think it's the time that we should tell the world what we are sacrificing for. This is not our war. We have been sacrificing, we have been wasting our resources, our young blood in this war, and it should be dealt in a very objective manner, very scientific manner, well considered. Expert opinion should be taken in, and then we should go to talk to United States.
Ultimately, it is the responsibility of United States, Mr. Wajih Abbasi, and the NATO forces to end this war, because if they pull out their forces from Afghanistan, only then we can see perhaps the war can end. But at the same time, looking at the mood in Kabul and the picture in Afghanistan, we see Mr. Hamdullah Mohib, who was earlier Afghanistan's ambassador to the United States. He has been very critical of Pakistan, by the way, a very hawkish approach towards Pakistan.
It's considered an anti-Pakistan approach.
And Mr. Hanif Atmar, who resigned as National Security Advisor, he was replaced by Mr. Hamdullah. Also, Mr. Khalilzad, Zalmay Khalilzad, has become the top advisor to President Donald Trump on Afghanistan. So we see 2 different people, one in the United States, a bit hawkish, not a bit hawkish, but hawkish really, and Mr. Hamdullah. These kind of officials and Pakistan's relations with Afghanistan who have been critical, these officials have been critical of Pakistan in the past. How would we work together?
Actually, when we are talking about this Qureshi's visit, we should also take into mind the agreement, understanding between the United States and Taliban to have next phase of their mutual talks. That's an important development in this whole situation, because the solution to Afghan crisis is not something between Pakistan and Afghanistan only. Taliban and the United States are actually the major parties. The war in Afghanistan is basically the war between Taliban and the United States. And the Afghan government, of course, it was established after the the United States invaded Afghanistan in 2001 after the 9/11 incident. So we have to take those things into consideration. If there is a development in between the United States and Taliban, and they agree to some sort of structured negotiations between them, then the things in Afghanistan will improve. Pakistan and Afghanistan, the present government in Afghanistan, they have to take things as they are. They have to do things to improve the situation among
knowing
themselves.
the ground realities, they have to work for the betterment. We have Mr. Rahimullah Yusufzai with us on phone call. Mr. Rahimullah Yusufzai is a renowned senior journalist and an expert on Pakistan-Afghanistan relations. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Mr. Rahimullah Yusufzai, welcome to the show. Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi is on his maiden trip to Afghanistan, Kabul, and there he met the Afghan President Ashraf Ghani and also his counterpart in Kabul. How do you see this gesture from the Pakistani side, that maiden trip of Foreign Minister of Pakistan has been to Afghanistan, and now both countries would be talking about improving relations? How do you see this trip?
I think it should be seen also in Kabul and Washington as a very important initiative by Pakistan. You know, normally our new government, our leaders, they go to Saudi Arabia to perform Umrah or they visit China. But this is, I think, the first time that the first visit by the foreign minister is to Afghanistan. Also, you know, the invitation actually had come from Afghanistan. Salahuddin Rabbani, the foreign minister, had called Shah Mahmood Qureshi and invited him to visit Kabul. And President Ashraf Ghani had also called Prime Minister Imran Khan and gave him an invitation to visit Afghanistan. So it shows that Afghan government also is very keen to try to improve the relationship. So that the keenness is on both sides. Now, how to use this to go forward, that is a big question. That is a big challenge. And I think this visit could set the parameters, especially, you know, the implementation of the recommendations which will be made by the working groups under the framework of the Afghanistan-Pakistan Action Plan for Peace and Solidarity.
Right. And talking about the terrorist organizations operating around the border, along the border in Pakistan and Afghanistan, how do you see that both countries can address this issue and the issue of border management? Because border management too has been a big concern for both governments.
You know, as I mentioned earlier, the framework of the Afghanistan-Pakistan Action Plan for Peace and Solidarity includes this reference, this principle, that they will not allow the use of their soil against the other country. So that needs to be implemented, as you said, to tackle the terrorist groups who may be operating on both sides. So now that is a big challenge, you know, whether they can implement that, whether they can do that, whether there's a timeline to do that. The border management, I think, is very important for both countries. Pakistan has taken this, unilateral initiative. There has been no support by the Afghan government. In fact, the Afghan government is opposing border management, although it will also benefit Afghanistan. So Pakistan has to convince the Afghan government that border management is in the interest of both countries. And if there is support and cooperation by Afghanistan to border management, I think that would be very useful for both sides.
Right. My last question. In the past, we have seen that few statements by the officials from the Afghan side have actually adversely affected Pakistan-Afghanistan relations. For instance, Mr. Hamdullah Mohib, when he was Afghanistan's ambassador to the United States, he was pretty critical of Pakistan. Now he is the National Security Advisor. Also keeping in mind Mr. Zalmay Khalilzad, who has now become the advisor to President Donald Trump. Do you think that such kind of statements would not be made in the future, let's say, and this would save the day ultimately for Pakistan and Afghanistan?
There are only a few people in Afghanistan who are holding official positions, who may be a bit, realistic, who may be pragmatic. Otherwise, most of them are very critical of Pakistan. You mentioned Zalmay Khalilzad, who has now been appointed, to a very important position after having served as the ambassador to Afghanistan and failed to deliver anything. And this, the new National Security Advisor, Mr. Mohib, he is, very young, I must say, and he has been also very critical of Pakistan. So Hanif Atmar, his predecessor, was more mature, I would say, but I think he wants to contest the election for president next year. That's why he has quit. So I believe that it will do a lot of good if there is a ceasefire of statements, if there are no allegations, no blame game, as they have agreed under this new framework. That was the decision. There would be no diplomacy through the media. They will bring all their grievances, complaints, evidences to this forum. As I mentioned, Afghanistan-Pakistan Action Plan for Peace and Solidarity. So if that is followed, I think this would create a very good situation. And, that could lead to more steps being taken by both sides to improve relations.
Mr. Rahimullah Yusufzai, thank you for your time. Pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Abid, talking about Pakistan-Afghanistan relations, and we were talking about the hawkish stance from individuals in the Afghan government. The statements or the blame game has been adversely affecting both countries. And when we talk about APAPs, when we talk about moving forward and working on different areas, giving a break to the adverse and negative statements, I think, is the key to better relations. How do you see that? Do you see that happening in the future?
You're right, it should be happen in future, and because it's a very common saying, everybody knows that the negotiation is the only key towards normalizing the adverse relations between two states. And this, trip of Foreign Minister, as Rahimullah Yusufzai has said, that it would be, productive if the Afghan government should also take the pragmatist or the people who are having some objective kind of attitude towards the normalization of situation and solving the problems between both the countries. Recently Pakistan has closed down its embassy or a consulate in Jalalabad due to security reasons, and the trade issues would also come under consideration. But the most important thing, the most fundamental thing is to sort out the problems between Pakistan and Afghanistan, because both the countries have been blaming, as you mentioned in your question, that the infiltration of terrorists from both the sides. The Afghans are maligning Pakistan, and Pakistan is also alleging that with some sort of evidences that Pakistani soil is being used by the Afghani people to support those terrorists who are and who have been operating in Pakistan, their terrorist activities. So I think through negotiation, Pakistan and Afghanistan could get some limited objectives, because without having a sort of, the American interest and Americans' role in the Afghanistan or in the region, we cannot go to the maximum length. So the need of the day is that United States should take into consideration the gravity of the matter, and they should also, as you mentioned, that the Taliban having some, Wajih Sahab has mentioned that the Taliban or the United States having some sort of negotiations, and these have been in the air since long. Yeah. And without having those negotiations and some peaceful settlement in Afghanistan, these issues remain, very much burning in the region.
But I think what Pakistan is concerned about is that this infiltration should stop, and that we should protect our own people. That is the most important thing for Pakistan.
The similar demands are coming from that side as well. They are also, alleging, though those allegations are somewhat having least substance, but they are also alleging that from Pakistani side was also being used against, terrorist activities in Afghanistan.
So New York Times, I would just quote New York Times article, how the US government misleads the public on Afghanistan. 61%, according to the defense analyst, 61% of the land is contested and is actually controlled by the Taliban. Though government figures, US government figures are saying something else, and the US defense analysts are saying something else. So the mess that Afghanistan is at the moment, obviously it is the responsibility of the United States, the NATO forces and the Afghan forces. What we can do is that we can protect the border, obviously.
Some of the proxies are also operating in Afghanistan. You know, the Indian interference or Indian interest in the region. Obviously, the Chinese having their own interest, the Russian having their own interest. And this sort of land has become a very complex situation. Or, you know, even in the past, that Wajih Saab has mentioned in his, previous answer that right from 1979, this land has, been a victim of terrorist or the war activities. And, these complex situation has developed due to those ongoing wars.
And now the people of Pakistan and Afghanistan, they want an end to this war that we see with no end in sight, to the war that is going on in Afghanistan. Mr. Shah Mahmood Qureshi, Pakistan's foreign minister, has made a gesture, a very positive gesture towards Afghanistan. His first trip to any country is the trip to Afghanistan, Kabul, and there he met the Afghan president. We hope that the relations would improve, and we hope that peace will prevail. We'll take a break at the moment, and after the break, we'll discuss about Prime Minister's address to the civil servants. In Islamabad, he talked about austerity. He talked about how we can improve civil services and how we can benefit people through that at the grassroots level. We'll take a break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Yesterday, Prime Minister Imran Khan had an interaction with the civil servants in Islamabad, and he talked about different points. Primarily, the idea was to think out of the box, for the people in Pakistan, and especially for the people, the downtrodden people at the grassroots level. Bureaucracy certainly is a big force, and bureaucracy has been working for Pakistan. Prime Minister made this point again and again. He talked about different things. He made the examples of Singapore, how Singapore has been improving its economy. He talked about austerity. He talked about economy. He also talked about thinking out of the box, as I said earlier, and that bureaucracy can do wonders. If government and bureaucracy and the people of Pakistan are on the same page, they can do wonders. Saving on money is vital to improving economy. That's what the Prime Minister said yesterday. And he also talked about different other things that we'll be discussing with our guest today. Mr. Wajih Abbasi, Prime Minister yesterday had an interaction with the bureaucrats, with the civil servants. He talked about that first point was very important and very interesting. He said that so far, somehow, our bureaucracy has been, in some cases, not in all cases, in some cases has been working on the colonial templates. The British were here, they had their own way of ruling India, of ruling subcontinent. More or less, the civil servants at one point somehow they have been working on those colonial templates. We have to change those colonial templates and we have to change our attitude towards the people. This point was very important. What do you think about this point?
Actually,
changing the attitude, changing the mind.
Yeah, I mean, this is changing the attitude also. But the basic thrust probably of this his talk to the bureaucrats was neutrality, so that they should work in accordance with the rules without consideration of the political affiliation of groups. And he said that you know, for me it doesn't matter that whether you support PTI or not, but what matters is that how do you work. So that's the important thing. But you know, they say that the taste of pudding is eating. So what the PTI government has been doing for the last one month, you know that the incident in Chakwal, as the Prime Minister was talking to the bureaucrats to be neutral, the Deputy Commissioners of Chakwal and Deputy Commissioner of Rajanpur, they were issued notices. When notices were issued, the point was that they have bypassed the normal procedure. You know, the issue for which those deputy commissioners have been protesting was not touched. That why the local
Elected MNAs
MNAs
ruling party.
of the ruling party have been interfering in their work, why they have been dictating to them.
Right.
And at the same time, there was this issue of the Pakpatan DPO.
But he also said that Prime Minister Imran Khan himself would protect the bureaucrats from the political pressure. So this political pressure has become sort of a monster, not just for the people of Pakistan, but for the bureaucrats as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of
So
course.
coming out of the political pressure is the most important thing.
Yeah, and that can only be done if the sitting government is strict on that, and they protect the bureaucrats. And one, you know, these. I mean, if it will go out of our, your program, but you know, these districts. I mean,
So we are not specifically discussing about the DCs or
we are not.
or
We
the
are
people,
discussing
anything
this.
generally about
I am,
the bureaucracy
yeah.
and the.
I am pointing out
civil service reform.
another thing in this point. You know, these districts have been. I mean, Punjab have had 19 districts. Now it has 36 districts. This time is Balochistan. These small districts were created during the different governments just to give these political electables, what we say, the local political notables, the clout on the bureaucracy. So this clout of the local electables and bureaucracy, but as long as you don't fight it, as you don't end it, the bureaucracy will not be able to deliver in a fair manner and treat all the citizens of Pakistan equally. That's very important. It's important to treat the people, irrespective of whether they support one party or the other, whether they support the government or not, but they should be treated fairly and legally and under the law.
Dr. Abid, not just in the districts of Sindh, Punjab, Balochistan or anywhere else, generally the issue of bureaucracy under the political pressure is a big issue for bureaucracy and also for the people. When you appoint people, when there's nepotism, let's say, or there's political pressure, certainly those institutions would not work, because if you don't appoint people on merit, certainly the whole structure of the state would collapse. What do you think about this? Protecting the bureaucrats, what the Prime Minister said.
This was the crux of the Imran Khan's allegations against the previous governments, that they are using political influence to appoint at top levels the bureaucrats, and those bureaucrats allegedly were serving the interest of those rulers in past. And this is the test case, because as Wajih Sahab has said, that these two examples, these two instances are not very much, liked by many people. And in social media, campaign was launched against those bureaucrats who complained against the interference of the MNAs of the ruling party. Right. But as you earlier said, that this colonial mindset of the bureaucracy should also be considered and should also be shunted out.
Political pressure is just one aspect. Because we are going to discuss about other aspects. So this point of colonial
I just want to
thinking
mention
an
incident of history that Wajih Sahab knows well about that Bhutto Sahab was also of the view that the government having an agenda, government having some sort of egalitarian reforms to implement, but the bureaucracy was not working properly and not cooperating with the government. They were having the government within the government. Actually, this was the sort of notion during the Bhutto eras, and Bhutto Sahab took so many sort of initiatives to quote unquote rectify the mindset of the bureaucracy.
This is one aspect.
Yeah.
There is another aspect that many people also accuse Mr. Bhutto, Prime Minister Bhutto, former Prime Minister Bhutto, of also interfering.
Obviously, I'm going to
appointing people on his will, because there are different ideas.
Actually,
we are
if we go back
talking
into
about
the,
any prime minister
into
or
the
government,
Bhutto era,
generally about the idea.
That was the first era, under the elected government, the popularly elected government under adult franchise base. So the bureaucracy was not having any sort of training, any sort of mindset to work with the civilian, democratic, powerful government. But now the situation has changed after many, sort of reforms in the civil bureaucracy. After the, this was obviously a legacy of the British era, and the Britishers were having this sound and very powerful bureaucracy to implement their colonial agenda in this region. But now we are not a colonial state, we are a democratic state. And Khan Sahab has well said, but for the same time, I would say very humbly that actions and your words should be having on the same sort of page. Your actions should also validate your talks. This would be only
louder than words.
Louder than words. And Khan Sahab has, pointed out so many points very well. But those points, these two incidents, though they are smaller institute, bureaucrats should also be taken to the task under the rule of law. The strict implementation of the rule of law can only, is the stick to rectify the problems lying in this area or any other area. But at the same time, it should not be, a smell of political vendetta or the revengeful actions of the government against this bureaucracy. Khan Sahab has also said that he would give them perks and privileges more, but after having some sort of stability in the economy of the country.
Probably after a year or two, certainly. And that was, I think, a big incentive, because bureaucracy needs incentives. And if Prime Minister has been talking about Singapore, he also said that the bureaucrats in Singapore, they get big pays, they have handsome pay over there in Singapore. But
not only bureaucracy, but also academicians, but also other people. They should also be given incentives that the corruptions should not be the need of those people. If somebody even doing corruption, even then he should be dealt strictly.
Mr. Wajih, Prime Minister also talked about malnutrition, malnourished children. We have a big number of malnourished children in Pakistan. He also talked about high mortality of women in labor. That is a big issue certainly for us. Infant deaths due to the waterborne diseases. He talked about that. Talking about these issues, these are the issues of a layman, of a common man in Pakistan. You go to Sindh, you go to interior Punjab, remote Punjab, Balochistan, KPK, Gilgit-Baltistan for that matter. These are the issues, the real issues of the people. The DCOs, the DPOs, certainly they can do a lot. They are doing a wonderful job, but there is room for improvement. Having a proactive bureaucracy, that bureaucracy can address the issues of the people at the grassroots level. What do you think about this statement, the malnourished children and the high mortality of women?
This malnourishment, the high mortality rate, infertility rate, this rate of minors, under 5 years death, the mortality of during pregnancies, all these issues actually are related to poverty. When you have you have a 40% population or 30% population is below the poverty line, they are earning less than $1 per day, then you can't say that we will not have malnourishment, will not have that sort of issues.
Unequal distribution of resources as well.
So the basic issue is, it stems from one of the reasons for poverty is on this distribution of wealth. But as long as you have poverty in the country, these issues will remain. So the basic issue will be to address the issue of poverty. And secondly, we are a state where the basic responsibilities of state like education and health are the most commercial activities in this country. You take in schools and the hospitals. They are the most
commercial.
most commercial, most flourishing business in this country. People make a lot of money and without paying taxes on them. So state has to come out
and actually parents cannot afford good education, let's say, for their children, and you cannot afford good health for yourself or for your family.
Yeah, and actually, there might be vested interests. I mean, I'm not accusing anybody, but there might be a vested interest. People, those who are making money out of schools and out of hospitals, private schools and private hospitals, they might be in hand in the deterioration of services in the government sector schools and government sector hospitals. You go to any of the districts in Punjab, they say that Punjab is the most developed, and you go to any district of Punjab outside Pindi, and you find...
That's right, but yesterday, Prime Minister also talked about accountability, and I think that was a very clear and direct message that if this goes on, what you're talking about, rightly so, then there is accountability as well, and those people who are working with such kind of people that you say would be dealt with, This point, Dr. Abid, of bureaucracy working for the people, right, we don't have a very strong economy. Mr. Wajih is very right when he says that there's abject poverty at the grassroots level. People are living in under the poverty line. But here is the point that you think out of the box. Again, I would say the DCOs, they have the capability, they have the idea. These are the people who should work for the people at the grassroots level in different areas. What can bureaucracy do, DCOs, DPOs, and other local administration?
I think when Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, was mentioning the problems which you have mentioned earlier, the education problem, infant, the mortality or the poverty, and about
malnourished children,
25 million children are not going to school, and poverty, as Wajih Sahab has mentioned. I think he was trying to connect these issues with the perks and privileges and those sort of extraordinary, lavish lifestyle of the bureaucracy, as Khan Sahab is always mentioning. It was in connection to his ongoing austerity, campaign.
Right.
So, because we have been seen in media that there are some houses of the commissioners and deputy commissioners comprising of, hundreds of canals and acres inherited by those bungalows from the British colonial system. Khan Sahab has taken very positive issues in this connection of austerity, but I think the more input should also be taken into the issue. For instance, those if Khan Sahab was addressing to bureaucrats to sacrifice for the nation, to give up their perks and privilege, extra perks and privilege. For instance, some of the bureaucrats having 4 or 5 vehicles.
By the way, he didn't say that. He said that we need to save on money primarily and don't misuse money.
Actually,
he didn't talk about perks and privileges. He said that
perks and privilege. I'm talking the lavish, beyond the legal authority of those people. The legality has given them some sort of perks and privileges.
Use those resources wisely.
But some of the issues of bureaucracy, as you mentioned, that they are having a very lavish lifestyle beyond their actual means.
Right.
This is what he was trying to convey them, and he was telling them that on one side, your whole nation, 25 million students or children are not going to school, and the infant mortality or ratio is so high, and these problems Pakistan is facing, you should answerable before God, and these sort of notions he has put before those bureaucrats without pointing anything, some sort of specific or anything, alleging anybody, or as you mentioned, that perks and privileges. These are their right, constitutional or legal right, but the salaries and the cars and the whatever
But what you mentioned earlier, I would just put this question to Mr. Wajih, my last question, and to you as well. Your concluding remarks on this, that this is not the first time that a government is trying to bring in reforms or making a committee on reforms, let's say. Dr. Ashraf Hussain would be heading 2 committees primarily. and the committee would be on civil service reforms and also one on public expenditure. But this has been also happening in the past, from the time of Benazir Bhutto to the Nawaz Sharif's time and on and on. But somehow we haven't seen much change in civil services or in the reforms. How do you see that?
Frankly, there are two things. One thing is that our normal bureaucracy, and there, there is another part of bureaucracy which we normally ignore. That is the government, where government is an entrepreneur. The government corporations and bodies and different
Projects,
projects and
right.
different. There's a huge bureaucracy there, and that goes. I mean, that
And
is outside.
bringing in technocrats and all that, right?
They are actually they are all political appointees. There are mostly the people, political appointees are appointed there, and that's not. They don't go through the FPSC. A normal bureaucracy
Right.
goes through
Yes.
FPSC, but they don't go through FTFC. They don't go through the establishment division. So that's one issue that they have to address. Secondly, the basic issue, of course, we had reforms during Bhutto time. We had then reforms probably after that. We had committees. I don't know how much those reforms were implemented. But we don't have actually the problem as such of bureaucratic structure. Fortunately or unfortunately, during the British colonialism, we had a very good bureaucratic structure in South Asia, and that continued for so many years. And Imran Khan has been saying that till 1960s, we had a very good bureaucratic structure. He has been praising that bureaucracy.
Right.
So we have that structure. Structure is still there. What we need now is to, as we started from there, to depoliticize it and give the bureaucrats confidence that as long as they will they will work under the rules, they will act fairly, they will not be touched.
Right. Dr. Abid, your concluding remarks on this political pressure on bureaucrats.
Well said, Wajih Saab, that this is very important need, that the depoliticization of the bureaucratic institution is the need of the day. And they should be dealt according to the rule of law. Whatever is written in the book, they should be treated like that. And there should not be any political influence. And Khan Saab has very categorically said that I don't have any sort of objection if you have affiliation with any political party. If you support PTI or not, I don't mind. But the pure merit should be carried out while deciding the issues of the country. And I think it's very categorical. But again, the thing which is more important is the implementation of the words.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Mr. Wajih Abbasi, thank
Thank
you
you
for
much.
your time. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Abid Abbasi, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. Prime Minister yesterday talked about bureaucracy and the role that bureaucracy can play to benefit the people. And he made some very important points. First of all, that bureaucracy has to think out of the box. The civil servants in Pakistan, as they realize and they know that the situation of Pakistan's economy, they need to think out of the box. The DCOs, the DPOs, certainly they can play a very positive role. Many of them are playing a very positive role. They're doing their jobs well. But at the same time, there's a lot that can be done. We have, Prime Minister said, a high mortality rate of women who die during the labor. We have malnourished children as well. People are living under the poverty line. We need to work on this, and we need to certainly improve our bureaucracy and to think out of the box. Thank you for watching today's program. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.
To continue to spend that kind of money and have their young boys killed in Afghanistan for a war which is not an American aim or in America's interest, at least American public's interest. So I think now the Americans have realized that this war ought to come to an end, and negotiations have to be taken up seriously.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Ambassador Ali Sarwar Naqvi, pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for your time. AVM Ikramullah Bhatti, thank you for joining us. Pleasure having you on the show. Pakistan stands for peace and stability, and as our experts said, that Pakistan wants peace and stability in Afghanistan, and the war must stop. United States and Pakistan both have been fighting a common enemy, a common foe, that is extremism and terrorism. They'll keep on fighting that. Pakistan has been targeting and eliminating terrorists inside Pakistan. But at the same time, we also expect that the terrorist organizations operating inside Afghanistan like TTP, Jamaat-ul-Ahrar and Daesh, which is the new phenomenon in Afghanistan, must also stop. And the Afghan security forces and the NATO forces should also take action against those elements which are operating inside Afghanistan and targeting Pakistanis, the innocent Pakistanis. Thank you for watching today's program. See you next time.